to Trans Experience LA. This is a series of interviews meant to introduce you to activists within the transgender community who've really helped to shape and mold the Los Angeles transgender community. Tonight, I am very honored to introduce you to Shirley Bushnell, who has been a trailblazer in our community and who really set the foundation for the City of West Hollywood Transgender Advisory Board. Welcome, Shirley. Good to have you on tonight.
Good to see you.
So, Shirley, I think it would be great to start off by learning about where you grew up.
I grew up as a country girl in a town called Talent, Oregon. And some of the words to associate with my experience is raised a Jehovah's Witness, baptized a Jehovah's Witness, disfellowshipped as a Jehovah's Witness.
Wow.
Yeah, and from that, and so that's sort of my early life. My family life consisted of domestic violence in the household, alcoholism on my father's part, a brother and a sister who have disowned me.
Wow.
So it's been, very isolated. The population may be about 500,
Wow.
And obviously in that, quote, day and age, no computer access. So I was very much alone. Didn't know who I was, what this was.
And Shirley, I think that really relates to a lot of the youth who grow up in cities that aren't metropolitan, hubs. At what age did you know that you were trans? Did you always know, or was there a point where you came to the realization?
When I was growing up, we didn't have a terminology, so I really didn't know until I was probably 16 or 18 a word. And the first word I came across that I thought I was a transvestite because, quote, I was male and I liked to wear women's clothes and had always liked to wear women's clothes. Didn't know why. As a Jehovah's Witness, I shouldn't do it. Tried to, put it in the closet, tried to get rid of it. My mother burned my clothes, all those type of pressures. Tried to play the heterosexual life by actually marrying a woman, which a lot of people don't know. I actually have a marriage and have fathered a child. And I say fathered because that's true.
Wow. And at what age did you begin your transition, and what was that like for you?
We're always in transition. We're always developing who we are. So I would say all my experiences from a very early age. But as far as being able to have the ability to express myself on a full-time basis as a woman and live that life, that was when I was probably late 20s, 25 or so. And there is a long story, but to shorten it, I had God had fathered the child, had the marriage with that. My wife didn't like the fact that I cross-dressed, couldn't understand it, blah, blah, blah. So we agreed to get a divorce. I moved from where I was living in Central Point, Oregon, into the Central Point City Fire Department as a sleeper, also to try and be around males so I would never cross-dress again. But I always did that. I got kicked out of the fire station because they found nylons in the dryer that I said was mine. And that led me on to really realizing that when I was living really on my own, I could dress when I wasn't working, and really led me that. But again, I was looking for others. I didn't know any others. I couldn't find any others. And there was my first real finding out of others was something that was held in Oregon for quite a while called Dream. And that was a 3-day event on the coast. And I remember driving up to that event. There was a police officer in the room. I thought, oh my goodness, what's going on? But that's when I had the 3 days of really full-time being me. And just, wow. What can you say about that? But I had a common law marriage with a man while I was in Portland, Oregon.
Wow. So you've had pretty much the whole sort of experience of dating. So you've dated a woman as identified as male, and then you've dated a man post-transition or post-surgery.
No.
Or pre-surgery.
Pre-surgery.
Oh, okay.
And actually I didn't have my surgery until 1994. and that was I was living in California at that time. The Gay and Lesbian Center was at Fountain and Highland, not the one you're usually working at.
Oh, yeah.
And they had a group for transgenders there, and that's where I met I now call my wife, that we've been together probably 27 years. She's also a transsexual woman, so that's why I can say I'm a lesbian. And she was also with me at my bedside when I had my surgery in 1994. And we've been together, done the legal marriage. But also, right after surgery, I did have sex with a male post-surgery so that I could know what that experience was like.
Shirley, you have a very interesting shirt on. It says Transgender Menace. Are you still a Transgender Menace?
Always.
Always, I love it.
Always.
How did the birth of the Transgender Menace in you come up? Not necessarily the movement of Transgender Menace, but for you as an activist, as a Transgender Menace, how did that happen?
Well, again, this really goes deep into the beginnings of our movement as the transgenders, or whatever you call them. We were debating transsexual and transgender, but it really happened in a very peculiar way, and I always say it was over a pair of socks. Mint socks.
Tell us about that. Over a pair of socks. Intriguing.
Yes. So I was working as a sous chef, or basically for, I'll mention it on air, University of California, Los Angeles. I was working for Dykstra Hall. And one of the assistant managers was a lesbian woman. And so I had sort of disclosed a little bit of who I was, and thought we were just great. Thought she would get it. Well, at a Christmas event, she decided to give all the employees gifts. She gave all the women earrings, and she gave all the men a pair of socks. She gave me a pair of socks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I was sort of like, and this is in front of your coworkers.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, but at that time I had heard, and she had sort of told me that they were just now, the first of its kind was forming what later was the pioneer for LGBT studies. Well, they were forming the lesbian, gay, bisexual advisory position, and they had hired Charles Alcott. So I just said, okay, I'm going to go to this and let them know what it's been like for me. As a result of that, I just got labeled transgender activist. And that's I implemented the T for the campus organization, and then statewide for the whole UCLA system.
Wow.
So that sort of started. I hadn't identified as a menace, but I had been identified as an activist. One of the first real things that got me going and identifying really as the transgender menace was Ricky Wilkins was the first one who pioneered that movement. And I felt that I needed to help make Southern California a safe place for other people, not only on campus, but wherever we were in Southern California.
Wonderful.
And so there had been right after I decided that, there was another professor that him and I teamed up because I wanted an FTM. If I was going to be the transgender menace, I needed a co-person, and it was the FTM I chose that helped me form, the Southern California Transgender Menace.
Oh, wonderful.
And our first action was a case involving an individual named Candy Walker. Candy Walker lived in Ventura. Okay, and I got in contact with a person there saying, we need to do a protest because this is the situation. Candy Walker had left her parents basically to a hotel and to deal with herself as Candy Walker. And she was so upset about her parents not understanding, she decided to come back 3 days later. As she was pounding on the door and demanding to be let in, her father fired shots at her, just barely missing her head.
Oh, my God. Wow.
And Candy Walker was arrested. And the DA said that she undoubtedly endangered the community of Ventura County over that incident in court.
Wow.
So that was what I did as the menace in that case, was got hold of the mother, got hold of the lawyer they were using, and educate them real fast. I brought in a FTM again. His name was Jacob Hill, and another person, I don't think I have permission to say, to come dressed like very professional to the courthouse when the DA said this, and I came in my T-shirt. So that's a little bit of how one of the first actions of the Transgender Menace in Southern California.
That's incredible, Shirley, and that you took it upon yourself without any other resources or groups, I think is really, really impressive. Shirley, when you were talking, I wanted to go back and touch on some things. You mentioned that the individual who gave you the socks was a lesbian-identified woman, and historically there have been issues between, lesbian feminists primarily and transgender women at times. Have you found it difficult to find acceptance in lesbian communities?
I have found it difficult to find acceptance in almost any community.
Really? Why do you think that is, Shirley?
Because for most of this time, just who we are and what we are has confused people. And so, obviously, whether you're a lesbian, identify as a gay male or a heterosexual, or however you identify, when you come in and give some of our dialogue, people don't get it. They can't figure out why, quote, a male would ever want to be a woman, or why a woman would ever want to be a male, or why there's so many different, variations on this. People don't get it. So I think I don't want to single out anyone. I have found tremendous allies in both lesbian, gay communities, Democratic Club, and so on, that can speak so eloquently. Of course, I had a low part in educating them and getting them to understand what it was. And one of the slogans of the Transgender Menace is to confront with love.
Oh, I love that.
And I love to make our world a safer place, and specifically Southern California.
And Shirley, tell me a little bit more about that education that you did with the community and how you feel that the community has changed since you were active.
Well, one of the really proud things for me that got me labeled Shirley Bushnell, the Trailblazer, was in this process, what was happening in our community. One of the things that some of us were even discussing tonight is how often we're the victims of hate crimes, stabbed, shot at, mutilated, and all that. And that's just always tugged at my heart, that we can't be free to walk down the street and be who we are and not look over our shoulders and wondering who's going to call us a fag, or that's a male, and laugh at us, or in one case somebody reaching into the crotch of a transsexual woman and says you're a male. It's very sad. So all of those things said, there has to be ways to do this. So the state of California was doing some very interesting things. They were trying to get a non-discrimination ordinance, and they were also trying to get us protected as a group in hate crime law. And this first city to actually do non-discrimination ordinance was San Francisco. About the same time, I had gotten word that the city of West Hollywood was also doing the same. So obviously I started really getting involved, talked before the city council, did public testimony, and all those things to do that. And lo and behold, as a result of that, they passed the non-discrimination ordinance. Well, Transgender Menace had to do something about that, confront with love, and let the businesses in West Hollywood know that this ordinance had been passed. So I organized about 20 different individuals.
Wow.
And we were going to march from the city hall down and leaflet the businesses as a direct action. Well, the city told me that I better talk to the West Hollywood sheriffs before I do this. This gave me the pioneering moment to go to the West Hollywood Sheriff Station, walk into their gay board, basically, and say, "Hey, I'm Shirley Bushnell. I'm a transgender." "What? Oh, we don't understand you." I said, "No, you don't." 2 weeks later, they agreed. They didn't understand a thing, really. So I pioneered making sure that we could do the action. But as a result of them admitting that they didn't know what really thought they did, but really didn't understand, as they started doing the first trainings to law enforcement ever done. And that action was the most memorial for me as an action, to have 10 people on each side of the street and flashing West Hollywood sheriffs accompanying us to making sure we were safe.
Wow, that's powerful. That's
very
amazing.
powerful. It just really, that's the trailblazing part.
That's beautiful. And Shirley, so tell me about how that led to the formation of the Transgender Task Force here in the city of West Hollywood.
Well, I got a little bit well known with the with the city.
Think so.
I was there. I was at city council meetings. I remember the first time that I walked in, because they were thinking about doing a lot of these things in the city, and I walked in with this T-shirt on. First thing, I was singled out by law enforcement. They didn't know if there was going to be a protest or if the city council was going to be disrupted. So, that was it. But because of my being there and doing this presence and confronting with love, working with law enforcement, doing the training, they saw that work. I have received the West Hollywood Leadership and Public Safety Award from them for doing this work for them. And so I was approached by a councilman. He says, you know something, the city, not only have you done it for our West Hollywood Sheriff's Department, but we really need feedback as a city on your issues and what's going on. And so they says, we would like to start a West Hollywood Transgender Task Force. And I became the first chair and got co-chairs for it. And I did that for 5 years and advised the city, and we met. That's how come a lot of our Day of Remembrances, we march from West Hollywood, we meet in West Hollywood, we're safe. Law enforcement knows how it gets better at this. My work with law enforcement led to the first station order of how to handle booking of transgender clients. That was done by Captain Odendahl. And Captain Castro came right after that and made sure that station order, I forget the number, was carried out so that they had an order of how to deal with it.
That's amazing, yeah. And Shirley, so tell me, you have laid the foundation for a lot of the work that's being done in the community today, the trainings with the LAPD and the West Hollywood Sheriffs. Now we have a formalized Transgender Advisory Board to the City of West Hollywood. How have you seen the community change and evolve in your time of involvement to now?
Well, what I've seen is that we have come a long ways, and I can hear more about what's going on across the United States. When I was first being involved, it was San Francisco. What I was doing here in Southern California, maybe some in New York, but now it's almost every state, and there's a lot of transgender individuals that you now hear about. So that, to me, is how the pioneering work that some of us in the very beginning, from Susan Stryker and things like that we started that so that more people across the United States and now across the world are feeling like we can say things, we can push to say, we need to be protected, we need to have health care, we need to have services for the homeless. We need to have services for those who are exposed to HIV. 26% from a study from Kathy Rebeck of transgender women were positive. So you have some very dire things going on. So I was also involved in helping testify and doing a speech that was well known called Today I Die in front of the county to get the first funding that we ever had for HIV prevention work for transgender persons, and actually had that as a behavioral risk group instead of being gay male or men who have sex with men. And we being lumped in with that, we finally became a group to get targeted funding to have services provided.
That's wonderful. And Shirley, so nationally there's a lot more going on.
Yes.
There's a lot more media coverage about our issues. What do you think has changed locally within the city of either West Hollywood or Los Angeles? Locally in the community, do you think there's any changes that have happened that you've seen?
A lot of the pioneering work that I did, I actually branched out not only to the West Hollywood, which led me to the LAPD. I became part of the, actually helped them form the T part because it was the LGB advisory board. Because I started coming, it became the LGBT. Again, this is some of the pioneering things where I started showing up and talking to the chief and things like that. So again, that's another change that was made.
Wonderful.
I was one of the first ones, along with a group of others, that went to the LAPD Academy specifically for transgender individuals. I also would go in and do trainings at the Hollywood Wilcox station. I could walk in the morning and do a training. Basically, I had that much freedom and that much respect.
That's wonderful.
The other thing that I did is I did not forget people of whoever they were, of color, of homelessness, whatever little tag we want to put on them, I never forgot about who they were. So if they were seeking services at PATH, I made sure that they had a program that would recognize transgender women and not separate them out again as men, and not separate them out just because they had HIV and they're now still men, that they targeted those and made sure, they were one of the first ones that, again, I could say, you'll be safe there. You can go there. You can go there and get services. I did trainings for the DA, the hate crimes DA in Los Angeles, made sure that when they start putting out their hate crime statistics that we started getting in that report so that this would gain attention.
That's wonderful.
I had his name, one of the DAs, hate crimes DA, Scott. I was sitting in while my partner was getting some tests at a local hospital. I sat there and my phone rang. It was Scott. The DA, hate crimes DA, says, "We just have a case. Can you advise me? How I can present this to a juror so that they can know the difference between this being a gay male and this being a gender hate crime."
And wow, Shirley, you've done so much. It's hard to keep track of everything. I was reading, when doing a little research on you, I was reading a speech of yours where you referred to yourself as an army of one. Mm-hmm. Do you still see yourself as an army of one?
We are all an army of one. So yes, I still see myself that way. And I think that's important. It's a very important concept. I don't want anyone to say I'm being so ego about it, but we have to think that way. Each individual has to be that army of one, making and saying, I need to be safe. I need these services. I don't need to be discriminated against. I need to get my health care. I need sensitive services. Each one of us needs to be that army of one. And I will always be that army of one. I've done it even consistently, even 5 years ago at a workplace who I hadn't come out. I came out to make sure when they were doing training that they portrayed our community in a light. And I was an army of one again.
Wonderful. So I see your next T-shirt, the Army of One. That's the next one. So Shirley, as we close out, I would like to hear from you. What is your hope for the future of the trans community? What do you want your legacy to be?
I want each individual to feel, feel great about who they are.
Wonderful. Well, Shirley, thank you so much for sharing your light and your life with us. I think it's so inspiring, and it's amazing what one person can do when they are ignited and when they have a passion for something. It's absolutely amazing. So thank you so much, Shirley, for joining us today and for sharing your life and your story and inspiring the future of the trans community. So thank you so much. Drian.